For the press preview, here is Arise analyst, Dr. Constance Inkogu. Constance, glad to have you this morning.
Thank you, Ndi, for having me. Good morning, and good morning, Adeso. How are you guys this morning?
Great to see you.
Yes,
Fantastic.
fresh Monday morning. I hope you're feeling fresh. Okay, so let's start with our sister publication this day. But before that, we'll introduce our guest today. He will be Segun Sowunmi. He's a political commentator and newspaper executive. Welcome, Segun. He's in the offsite studio. So let's go to this day newspaper. After re-emerging ECOWAS chair, Tinubu charges members to meet fiscal contracts. He says Nigeria will lead by example. He offers nations counter-terrorism center for use by the entire region. He also canvasses unity, innovation to boost regional economy. Well, after the bungling of the crisis in Niger and also in Mali and Burkina Faso, ECOWAS is still is it still relevant to people in the region? I think that's the first question that anyone will ask with all that's been happening from last year to first quarter of this year. Do we still need ECOWAS, the economic community of West African states, for the region? Segun.
It says Segun is not ready yet.
Right, okay, Segun is not ready. Okay, so we can start the chat here. So is ECOWAS still a relevant tool for economic advancement in the region? Do you think so?
Well, one would believe it is still very necessary, if not for anything, for trade among African nations. And again, for security reasons, not minding the fact that three nations, Burkina Faso, Mali, and then one other nation kind of balked, if you will put it that way, on their responsibility to ECOWAS because of the problems that because of coups,
yeah.
I mean, which the rest of the world, not just Africa and not just Nigeria alone, is saying that it's not tolerable. But then again, the question of leadership, the question of serving the people, which I'm sure in the course of this paper review we're going to look at from some papers, comes up because the cry, okay, I gather that Segun is ready, but okay, you will go to him a little bit from now. The cry is that the coup happened. What you're for or against this is that the leaders of those nations were not mindful of service to the people. They were rather selfish, and so the necessity, according to the coup plotters, of the coup, whether that is something you buy in. Of course, ECOWAS heads of state didn't buy into that, and those countries chose to opt out, But now the president of Nigeria has re-emerged as the ECOWAS chair because they feel they're comfortable with him, his leadership, and probably to see how they can still get those nations, back on board. Because even those nations fought against France. Some of them said, no more of you and your overbearing influence on our country, not to talk of the conflict they have with the nations that make up the ECOWAS.
Yes.
It's probably still necessary, like for what reasons I have proffered, security, trade among the West African states.
Segun, we're discussing the future of ECOWAS, which hangs in the balance right now. Our president has re-emerged the chair of this region. This region has been on for a while, mainly for economic advancement. But, of course, there are political issues within the bloc that we have to deal with. So you need a lot of diplomacy. These are sovereign, independent countries. You need a lot of diplomacy and tact to handle all the political issues that are rising. Where do you see ECOWAS going to in the next couple of years? Do you see an ECOWAS that will be revived, or do you see it dying a natural death?
Well, good morning, guys. The European Union and its attempt at having a bloc in Europe and what has befallen it in terms of nations now wanting to assert their independence will help us to have an idea of the trajectory of what will happen to ECOWAS. The scramble and partition that created Africa created a certain tendency of Pan-Africanism, of coming up with region. But now, 3 countries have said they want out of ECOWAS. They want to start another Sahelian groupings, which they are also going to find out over time is going to have the same issues around ECOWAS, like ECOWAS is having. I think we have to first of all ask ourselves, do the Africans see themselves as one people? Or can we see ourselves as one people? Bring it down. Can West Africa see itself as one people? What is the full implication of the Anglo-Franco conversation between French, countries that are backed by French and countries that are backed by England? So I would say congratulations to the president. ECOWAS will do whatever he thinks he can do, maybe the free movement of citizens in between, which is also having its own toll on security and what have you. We'll see. But I believe that West African leaders have a right to gather, and they have a right to have a talk shop. They have a right to say they want to have some big envelope ideas. But if our history is anything to go by, the single currency, which is the echo they've been trying to make, it's been foot dragging and all that. The people, the citizens within those regions may not really accept that this is what is going on, that democracy is failing because it's not meeting the expectation of the citizens. And citizens are reacting in different ways. Why should people be happy to have a coup when they could have easily been changing their leaders as they went due? But it's all over. Nigeria has a pivotal role to play because of our size and the number of our population. Congratulations to the president, now that he has to be chairman, although we minimize ECOWAS. I'm sure they will continue to do the back and forth negotiation and hope that something happens. I also think that Russia showing interest in the sub-region is also something they should consider.
Right.
But by and large, since the organization has not deregistered itself, we'll still continue to urge them on and hope that they deliver value to their citizens.
I think as you mentioned, that dynamic, the French dynamic in the ECOWAS region is key. I think a lot of English-speaking African countries and citizens do not understand that. But there's that piece there in the mix that is quite explosive. And so you have to understand the historical underpinnings and why what is going on in Francophone West Africa is happening. So I think we have to pay attention to that. Let's quickly go to Punch newspaper. So here in Punch, we have a story on fuel scarcity looms as depots raise petrol price to 720 naira per litre. Fuel scarcity is gradually surfacing in Lagos and other parts of the country. Private depot owners hiked the price of petrol from 630 naira to 720. Some filling stations on Sunday in Abuja and adjoining states were dispensing PMS as high as 900 naira per litre. Some stations in Lagos, Ogun, and other states have run out of stock. And the National Vice President of Independent Petroleum Marketers Association, Hamid Fashola, says NNPC Limited, the sole importer of petrol, needs to explain to Nigerians what's going on. He claims those that shut down their stations have no fuel to sell. Well, by now, there's a general exhaustion with this topic of fuel scarcity. The problem is endless, and there's no excuse for it. Adesowa.
You know, the unfortunate thing in this is that the Nigerian consumer has been left to their fate, and we've seen it grow, in recent times. Who is really protecting the Nigerian consumer? So in the nation's capital, Abuja, sometime last week, I believe middle of the week, we all just woke up and saw that filling stations closed their gates against motorists and were not selling. No excuse was given. Nobody knew what was going on. And then Ipman tells you one story, or there's no problem, transportation, movements from Lagos to Abuja, Lokoja, and that's why you have what we have. But NNPC will keep mute. The regulator says nothing. They'll tell you there's no cause for alarm, which is their usual rhetoric. But there is obviously cause for alarm. Look at the picture that Punch has put on its front page this morning. It tells you the man hours we are losing, because people are trying to buy petrol to their vehicles to move around. And authorities don't think that this is significant enough to treat. But what are the main issues here? They are saying that the landing cost at the moment is 720 naira. So it doesn't make sense that at the pump, Nigerians will continue to buy petrol at 630 naira, 660 naira, which is what we're currently buying it in some places. This is not going anywhere, unfortunately, and I don't think anybody is addressing it enough. But again, my bottom line is the Nigerian consumer has been battered so much, they are left to their fate. It is so annoying.
You know, NNPC Limited is probably one of the most incompetent institutions of government in this country, even after the unbundling recently. It appears that the unbundling of the organization hasn't been consequential enough. You know, whatever has been done isn't sufficient to turn it around. Here we are back again talking about fuel scarcity, Shegun.
Well, I think that the fundamental of this problem is what we need to discuss. One, what is the experience of the world with countries that float their currency and say market forces should drive everything? Well, you can go to 1973 and look at a 5-year work of some other countries. We don't have enough time. I can't go into that. What I would just say is this. It is no longer possible for Nigeria to buy petrol from wherever, either even from our own country, dominated by the dollar, have an exchange rate of the dollar parity, which means that people are looking for dollars at the price that the market is dictating, bring the product into the country, refuse to do the bridging of the difference between how much the people who import and how much the people who consume. We are going to have to deal with this for a very, very long time. It is made worse by the fact that we have created, with a lot of too big to fail, government pampering, a big Dangote refinery that is just speaking English. We're not pumping the petrol that we need locally, and therefore we don't even have that opportunity to manage supply from the local end. So I think that as Nigerians, I don't accept the policy of the federal government on that level, but as Nigerians, you have to understand that once your country takes a policy direction on privatization, floating of the currency, removing their hands from the dollar exchange rate and deregulation, this is the reality. Is our situation worse than others in the world? No, it is not. Energy crisis and increase in price of energy, petrol and what have you, all over the world is an issue. How do we manage it? Our inability to rack up enough investment into public transportation has left us with this. Now, what do I expect us to do? The media, the organized private sector, the presidency, the civil society, we all need to ask ourselves one question. Are we going to complain about a problem that we all don't have a solution to, or are we going to mature up and treat this product the way we treat every other product in the country? When you go to the market and you have an increase in the price of garri, you don't start screaming. You buy the quantity you can, you find alternative and what have you. I know that energy is fundamental to everything, and I think that those of them who have to deal with policy can come back and let us have a conversation on a deeper level as to what happened to those countries that floated their currencies in terms of their reserve and their ability to, and that the promise of market regulation is all fraud, because capitalism does not work on people being sympathetic to the poor. Capitalism works on people taking as much profit as they can get. And what happened to those countries that continually regulated their economy? What we found over 5 years is that those who regulated had bigger reserves, and those who didn't regulate, they kept struggling and struggling and struggling and struggling. And the promise of private sector behaving itself and removing government supervision is fraud.
Well, you know, it is going to be a very long night for Nigerians, because when you look at the implications, apart from the cost of fuel, it means that the cost of transport will keep increasing, and then that impacts food prices. I mean, this is going to be disastrous, and it's not ending anytime soon. The other day we were discussing about 2030, the warning by the United Nations that if we do not deal with the food insecurity, a lot of people, millions, are going to starve by 2030. The warning is here already. You know that this is going to be long-term.
I remember Tunde Bakri saying that the president's comment on the day he was inaugurated was spontaneous. knee-jerk approach, not well thought out. I think it was last year, if I remember correctly, that by December, or was it before that, NNPC said one or two of the refineries will be working. When Shegu mentioned fundamental, you know, if you treat problems, for example, a tree, you cut off the leaves, the branches, the stem, and you don't go to the root to address it, you're wasting your time. Just the other day, what was Labour, their strike about? Salaries, livelihood, and then the electricity. In the midst of their suspending the strike, government still went ahead to jack up the tariff again. This just tells you that what you're witnessing, which was what I was talking about the three countries that decided to shift away from ECOWAS, are your leaders. Are the leaders responsible to the people? Do they think about the people before they make decisions? The fundamental issue here is that the refinery should have been addressed. Like Shegu said, look at Dangote, that is supposed to come on stream. And then there is fight now about supplying, not supplying, about it being high, not being high. Everything is just topsy-turvy. The main issue is to address the refineries, get them working. Anyhow, you say a few people are cutting Nigeria short by stealing the petroleum products out of the nation. Who are they? Tackle them. Let's know them. Stop them from doing that. Address these issues instead of piling pressure and pressure and pressure upon Nigerians. This is the main gist. Fundamentally, the issue of petroleum has not been addressed, and Nigerians are suffering for it.
Well, like I said at the beginning, people are so tired of the story. We will be watching. Let's go to Guardian, since you mentioned Labour. There's a story on the Guardian newspaper. It says, states may sack 600,000 employees to implement minimum wage. This is another crisis looming. According to this Guardian special report, expenditures do not match revenue, placing states in quagmire. They have a very beautiful detail here. Let's look at it. It says states with the highest personal cost to revenue ratio: Kano 41%, Imo 37.6, Adamawa 37.3, Taraba 37.2, Ogun 35.6. Then states with the lowest personal cost to revenue ratio: Akwa Ibom 15.6%, Ebonyi 16.4%, Bayelsa 16.4%, Lagos 16.6%, Anambra 17.6%. But it also shares with us the total IGRs of states over the years. 2018, 1.1 trillion naira. 2019, 1.56. 2020, 1.21. 2021, 1.6. And 2022, 1.8 trillion. 2023 total cost personnel for states is 1.94 trillion. So a lot of figures are there. Your thoughts on this troubling story, Shegu?
Well, I think that, you see, the Nigerian nation and the handlers and the leaders of this country like to take the people for granted. You cannot have a nation where you're struggling with the reality of what can 30,000 minimum wage do. Labour is pragmatic and reasonable enough not to shut down the country forever and ever. And the best thing you can see to tell them is to be threatening them that you're going to sack people because you are irresponsible. For you to come to Labour and come to the people to say that this is a challenge, we need to do this negotiation, you must start to trim the pork from where you are standing. It's a different kettle of fish if you say you are halving all of your salaries, you are dumping all of this, your hangers on, people can see that your vehicles you've reduced the comfort. You can't be living large on the people and then still be threatening them that, oh, because of this minimum wage, which you know is not working. I have recommended that instead of all this conversation of a minimum wage, we can have an annuity created what they call this, inflation-adjusted rate automatically. So we don't even have this conversation anywhere. If you go to the actuaries and people that know about financial mathematics, they can give you the model. But here we are. You have not given them what they can work with. They're going to have to buy more fuel. Yeah, you have increased A band, C band, 3 band of light. You literally think that you are going to take the piece with Nigeria. Let me just add one caveat. I had said to the U.S. State Department in one of their meetings in America that, look, you guys are playing with fire. Nigeria is a 220 estimated million people. No nation in the world has been destabilized that is more than 40 million. It costs the international community at least $1 million to manage one refugee. And you have never dealt with any nation on the surface of the earth that is more than 40 million destabilized. Do you know what will happen if 220 million nation gets destabilized? Well, they can be threatening the people if they want, and the people can be piling the pressure if they can, but there will come a time when you're going to have them snap, and I pray they don't snap, and I don't want them to snap because it has cost us a lot of energy to build the little infrastructure we have. We don't need chaos here. Those who are writing these kinds of headlines, they will sack 600 million people, are joking. You can't. You will have to find a better model that allows you to be able to be more empathetic to the people, and you have to cut off all your arrogance and in feeling and, on an empathetic way of conversing with the Nigerian people, because that's not where we are now. People are really suffering. You go around the country, you will feel it, except maybe if you are sitting in the villa or in the comfort of your respective state houses and you are thinking that it's business as usual, but it's not.
Let's look at what's happening in Kenya after the protests. When the Kenyan people pushed back on their government, the government heard them loud and clear. And what did their president, William Ruto, do?
Step back.
He cut down the government expenditure by 50%. Buying of vehicles, unnecessary traveling. He slashed everything down. He was like belt tightening. First of all, for the government, before you extend it to the people. Like Shagu said, we are playing in this country. There are ways to cut down government expenditure. If you want austerity measures has to start from within government. And when you look at the Nigerian state, yes, we might not be generating enough revenue for our population to run the economy now, but there is a lot of waste that can be cut. And when government officials are moving around talking about sacking people, but not doing the right things that need to be done, then really it's so unserious, this one.
Indeed, you both hit it right on the head. The problem is that we've always had a lazy approach to things in this country. So the way to create more jobs is for government officials to create positions for, what someone from Edo State used to call Hallelujah Boys, Senator Bayago, those who have helped during elections and all of that. So it's political offices are spread across and they're over-bloated. I'm not surprised to see this headline. And this is why Labour will never agree for governors, subnationals to take charge of the national minimum wage. This is why they insist it is a national minimum wage and cannot be left to the hands of the governors who have not shown good faith. When you compare Nigeria's minimum wage, it is one of the lowest. It is below the international poverty line of about $2. When you compare to some of the top oil-producing countries in Africa, I saw some of the figures, and in Naira terms, we're just doing better than maybe Sudan. Ghana is about 38,000. But when you go DR Congo, the rest of them, Egypt, you're paying in 300s and above in Naira, 300,000 Naira in Naira terms. Nigeria is still doing 30,000 Naira as a major oil-producing country. It is sad. It's a sad rhetoric that must change. And in the midst of all of this, like you said, we have everything seems to be jacking up. Everything is increasing except the money the Nigerian worker takes home. It is not a living wage. How serious can we be? Unfortunately, I think the president has been put in the eye of the storm here because we are now all waiting to see what he transmits to the National Assembly. He has taken our ball, the ball is in his court. He said he will negotiate with subnationals. Unfortunately, at the last meeting with the National Economic Council, where the president, who is not constitutionally a member, attended, we all expected to hear something about national minimum wage, but we did not hear it.
Right.
So it's unfortunate, really. It's unfortunate.
Before we rest the story, there is also the angle of the viability of states. A lot of states in Nigeria, as currently constituted, are not viable. It's not that they cannot be, but it's also this lazy approach that everyone is waiting for money because they know the money comes from the federal government. That needs to change, indeed.
Yeah, we'll be going to on a brief break, but let me just add that I will just take what Shego said, hook, line, and sinker, and then add it to the one you said, even the one Adesso spoke. Do you know the humongous amount that governors get to take as security allowance? And what you call constituency allowances that the NAS take home.
Bazaar.
Using for nothing. Most of them don't even see it. It's simple. You are taking Nigerians absolutely for granted. There are ways that this cost can be cut. And like you mentioned, Kenya, the man just refused taxes and did exactly what you'll expect a leader, not a ruler, to do. Cut off government expenses that were not necessary. You're still watching Daybreak, the paper review. We'll be back in a bit and we'll continue. Don't go away.
Well, it's 7:31 a.m. West African time. This is Daybreak. Thanks for staying with us. We are still reviewing top newspapers from the local and international scene with Dr. Constance Ikoko, a Rise News analyst, social commentator, and journalist. We also have our guest analyst for this Monday morning, Segun Showumi, a politician, like I like to say. Thanks for staying with us.
This one don't stir the pot this morning. Okay, let's go
But
to...
he is a politician.
He's a political commentator.
She's just stating the obvious fact. And I'm sure Shego will agree with her.
Okay, let's move on to leadership. I don't know if we have leadership, but a very important story there. Racketeering, air passengers lament as touts take over ticketing. Air tickets are soaring due to activities of racketeers. Passengers are having to pay a princely 250,000 naira for an hour flight from Lagos to Abuja, for instance. The problem arises from reduction in the fleet of local airlines in operation, leading to an increment in ticket prices. Reduction of airlines is due to the grounding of aircrafts due to volatility of foreign exchange. This has led to reduction in the number of serviceable aircrafts in the country. And in the last year, 13 domestic airlines operated about 91 aircrafts. But now half of the aircrafts have been suspended due to maintenance checks and suspension by civil aviation authorities. I mean, this is a classic example of how literally everything is connected to the economy. The foreign exchange volatility is killing us in Nigeria. Segun.
Well, let's stay with the airline. We're a big nation, and we have the capacity to attract more investment into that industry. Yes, it's capital intensive. I think the federal government of Nigeria would do well to go on significant roadshow with venture capitalists and try to show them that, okay, we will not do the same mistake of not allowing you to get your monies like we did for a while. Kudos to the president. He's covered some of the cost, but we need to attract bigger players into the local airline industry because what we have right now is chaos. People are not able to fly comfortably. The price is very high. You have to bootleg even the tickets, the airports. I mean, when it rains, it pours. The artery, the heart that beats on everything when it comes to development for nations like ours is what you are doing with your monetary and fiscal policy. And for us, I hold the view that the present arrangement is wrong. They have turned in the direction that will hurt the Nigerian people. We're not exactly a rich country, and they need to understand that the responsibility of government is not to bring figures that other nations, IMF, World Bank will be happy with, but to look at the eyes of their people and see whether they can see egalitarian development. It doesn't matter how poor they are. So when you put the service of the people, the lowest of the people at the central policy of your policy, you will get the kinds of monetary policy and fiscal policy you need to drive that economy. Don't worry about private sector. They are here for profit. They will tag along. But if you look at everything from the private sector point of view, you gather the Dangotes of this world. The first time they are your economic advisor, it didn't work. You gather them the second time, they are economic advisor, it didn't work. You gather them the third time, let us hope it works. But I'll ask you, how did the Nigerian economy get to this level? where the disparity between the rich and the poor is so high. It's down to the fundamentals. For the airline, we need new investors, we need recapitalization, we need to beg people to come in, because there's no point in federal government saying they want to enter into the industry as players. The last time they said they were going to do Air Nigeria, we still can't explain how we ended up borrowing an aircraft from another country, painting it, and generally hoodwinking the whole country. But when you are a nation of zero consequence, everything happens in your country.
You know, it is apparent that the airline industry is gradually dying. These challenges are severe, and we cannot afford this. From 91 aircrafts to half of that. Again, the foreign exchange volatility, it shows you how the dots are connected. What happens in one sector, whether it's macro or micro, affects the other. It's all just connected. So something needs to be done about this.
Indeed. I mean, it's the outlook we have towards things again. You know, this weekend, I think I have to go apologize to a friend who said to me, she spent 300,000 naira on one-way ticket, and that's for less than an hour flight from somewhere in the southeast to Abuja. And I didn't understand, I couldn't fathom how she was spending 300,000 naira on a one-way ticket. But apparently it's correct, it's true. You know, so it's the outlook we have really to think. If you understand the contribution of the aviation industry to the GDP, then we would take consumer protection seriously. We'll also take the confidence of consumers and the industry seriously. But it doesn't look like that's what's going on. A few private individuals are trying to ensure that this industry survives. A very few of them. In the past, like Mr. Shegun has said, we've seen government intervention in the aviation sector. But again, there's this issue of the economy that just revolves around everything, Forex in particular, how the business is surviving. But for me, bottom line, and it's with the same thing with the fuel scarcity issue that we're seeing in Abuja, and I hear now it's spreading across the country, it's just what we do to the consumer. Nobody says anything to you. The NCAA has a department on consumer protection. What are they doing? You see people's flights are delayed unnecessarily. Nobody's telling them anything. You get to the airport. The racketeering is serious because in fact, she told me that those who even had legitimate tickets, who had booked their tickets, were not allowed to board this particular aircraft because they were selling to the highest bidders right there at the airport. And you wonder, this is done in broad daylight. Who is protecting the Nigerian consumer is my takeaway from all of these stories this morning on the front pages of the newspaper. Who is protecting the Nigerian consumers?
You know, the airline industry is so crucial. When you look at the challenges that we have with roads, you know, a lot of people have resorted to flying because if you go by road, many instances the roads are bad, or maybe there's a security problem, so you do not want to be trapped in a fire between terrorists or even kidnappers or bandits. So when you don't have that option anymore of flying, what kind of country is this going to be?
People have to resort to, I mean, let's face it. How do you pay 300,000 naira? And that's what I said, one way.
Yes.
That means if it is two, you're paying 6. You have to go by road. I mean, I'm just saying
or
that.
Or don't even go anywhere.
That's it. I mean, there's no question of it. How much do you earn? Do you, except you steal money? You know. And then on top of all this, that's what Shego and Constance, there are flight delays. There are cancellations. And nobody goes in for it. Nobody bothers. And you ask the question, what is the matter with our system? Like she said, why are consumers having to bear the brunt of this and nobody goes in for it? It beats you, really.
Right. So that problem has to be solved. Let's go to the international headlines and see what we have for you. Shall we pull up the Financial Times? That's France, a story on France. France's leftist alliance on track to halt rise of Le Pen's RN polls show. Of course, we know already that the left won that election. Well, secured majority of seats in the parliament. The far-right party was thwarted. No bloc on track to govern alone. EU's second largest economy in limbo. I mean, in France last night, it was a spectacular turn of events, surprising that the far left won the majority of seats in the parliament. The predictions after the first round was that the far right, was going to win. They did come very close to power, but at the last minute, there was an alliance on the left that said, we have to halt this, we have to do whatever is possible. So they had to close ranks, even if they did not like themselves. They had to close those ranks in order to keep Marine Le Pen's party from power. But it looks like this is going to be temporary, Shego.
Well, you see, a bigger problem is, why is the world going so left now? At the heart of it is that people are getting tired of globalization and they're falling back to their nationalistic lines. And when you see that, you can see what's going on in America with Donald Trump, the kind of rhetoric he's saying. You've seen what's happened with London, Labour, anti-Brexit. You've seen so you see, for us, we have to look at humanity as one and imagine that what's going on with humanity, especially with micro-blogging and the fact that you can sit in Lagos and see what's going on in France like we're doing now, is telling us one story. It's telling us that the mass of the people, the majority, the masses, if you like, the poor, they have come to the realization that have they been put on earth just to be cheerleaders to the rich? And therefore, because they are now demanding more, they are reverting to leftist ideologies. I think for France, they will have to learn that the policies of the years past, where their territories, especially in Africa, have been the one bleeding so that they can just be eating their caviar, is coming to a close end. And they will have to relook at the fundamental of their own lifestyle and their economy. They will have to learn from their cousins in Germany and England and figure out a way to manage democracy and its expectations. And once they do that, I think they'll be fine. It really doesn't matter whether it's party A or party B. No one political party can ever be in power all the time. You can see what's going on in South Africa. So I think that France, the leftists are in charge now. Let's see how they're going to build the alliance, and let us see how that will impact African-France relationship. Because among the power blocks that play heavy in Africa, France is one of them, Britain is one of them, the United States is one of them, China is one of them, and of recent, Russia is now beginning to make push. For us in Africa, as it concerns us, is their domestic policy. Ours is to make sure that our national interest is aligned in such a way that it serves the purpose and the intention and the lifestyle of our people. Pumps.
As per say, it's difficult to govern France if the party or the party in power does not have 240 to 250 seats in parliament. Even with 250, it's very complicated. Now, no party has gained that absolute majority. So it looks like in the coming months, it's going to be a really, really rough road trying to form that coalition with each party is saying, we're not going to drop our own policies. Yeah. People have voted us based on the promises that we have made. Europe doesn't need a France in turmoil because France is key to the European Union. This one.
Indeed. What we have seen in France, and I'm surprised that Mr. Shegun did not, delve into that place. There's so many lessons to learn from France. This is a much different outcome than a lot of people expected, even though the exit polls, they haven't really counted the votes, but exit polls do show that Emmanuel Macron's party is second, Marine Le Pen's far-right party is third, and the leftists are first. Now, like you've said, it's going to be difficult because the leftists have said they're not going to propel Macron's party because their people voted for them. So how do they form policies? How do they form this coalition? This is uncharted territory for France. They've never really seen this before. We'll watch to see. But again, the point I wanted to make was how this all happened, because we also what happened in the first round of elections. It looked so far right that everybody was questioning why Emmanuel Macron had to call that snap election out of fear when he saw what was happening in the Euro elections. But you see what happened? A lot of candidates from the left and the central parties stood down so that there will be no multiplicity of candidates. And it made it easy because they dropped down. They had the common goal here was to ensure that the far right doesn't gain power. And have they succeeded? Oh, yes, they have. It was a concerted effort by these parties, by these politicians to ensure that we don't see the far right. Mr. Showumi, can we see that in Nigeria where politicians drop their ego, political parties drop their ego, and see that, you know, this is what's best for our people. Let's put policy, let's put country before people. Right. Let's put country before parties.
Well, you're right. I try as much as possible on this particular program to wear the hat of a executive producer of the Point newspaper and not the politician.
Okay,
but
great.
Since you want to hear the story of the politician,
Yes.
I think that...
We don't have much time.
Yeah, I know.
Please.
I think that the politicians in Nigeria must understand, if you cannot come together to form a pro-people alliance, you have no business even winning the next election.
Exactly. See the parties in France.
Yeah, but the reason being that the problems that the present president is solving or trying to solve are not problems that you can easily solve alone. It's only when you can put it, apart from wanting to win, you also have to want to deliver. So if you don't have the capability to do a pro-people alliance that can help you begin to deliver differently, why should we even change the president in charge?
Right.
Because after all, he didn't create these problems.
Right. So let's quickly go to I newspaper in the UK. Labour heading for new Brexit clash with the EU on extra migrants. The EU signaled that it wants easier migration for young people aged 18 to 30 to come to the UK for study, to live and to work. Foreign Secretary David Lammy is talking with the EU over streamlining UK food exports. Of course, export is important to the UK. They're an island, they're in the European Union. A German diplomat says easy mobility for young people is a priority for the EU, a demand that was previously rejected by former Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. Labour says free movement is not on the table, and the party is reluctant to increase youth migration while admitting that securing better trade terms are not an easy negotiation for the country. You know, the UK is an island. It looks like even with the Brexit, it needs the EU in order to survive. And so at the same time, he wants to eat its cake and have it. And I think it already is going to be a lot of clash with the European Union because they also have other priorities. So what do we see going forward here? I think for the UK, they are prioritizing the needs of their people. And I also think this is a lesson for us in Nigeria. You have to prioritize the needs of your people while trying to balance other regional considerations, continental or global considerations as well. Shegu.
Well, I think that the Northern Rhine-Westphalian Treaty was what created national borders. It's not like it's always been there. And after the Northern Rhine-Westphalian Treaty, what we found out was that people first of all thought they wanted to be nationalistic. Then we had 2 wars. Then they thought, okay, we are better managed if we have big blocks and we are one people. Then they started feeling the bite. You know, people will move to wherever they want to move. Some people were moving into London and taking the jobs, and the Britons were getting angry, and then they wanted Brexit. Now the party that brought Brexit has been thrown out. Labour is here, and Europe is making demands. But Labour knows in England that it doesn't matter what demands EU is making. They have to deal with the fundamental of what their people are saying. The color of England has changed so much that you have to be scared for them. From a country of Caucasians and English people and Saxonian, it has become such a rainbow nation that even the original Britons must be worried. And so they're not ready to have everybody come in there, claim they want to go and work, then settle permanently. And we'll have to see how it goes. Britain can eat its cake and have it. And EU must be very reasonable with Britain. We don't need to have either an economic war or a real war because we are trying to argue over where people should stay. Every nation should try as much as possible to do the fundamentals of his own country so that its citizens can stay there. But England is not going to open itself up to become a nation that everybody from Europe will just empty into England, and then it will no longer be fish and chips, and they no longer feel very British.
Shegu, are you a British citizen? You seem to be repping for the United Kingdom. You're looking for that chips or what?
Well,
yeah, so I mean, David Lammy, who is the Foreign Secretary, has his work cut out for him here?
All of them. I mean, let me just reel out what Daily Express says, for example. It says, the manifesto, they're urging the new PM to boost growth, revamp the NHS and social care, protect our borders and Brexit, keep the triple lock, back women's rights, save our high street, increase armed forces and protect the countryside. Now, Keir Starmer has come on board, and immediately he just said, no longer politics of performance. Where Sharp said what killed the Conservatives was that they were busy struggling for positions, not minding the people. Keir Starmer says it's now a government of public service. Politics is about doing good, using that platform to do good. So we watch and see whether it'll be talk alone. But if one were to advise Labour, like someone said, it's not out of love, but because they wanted Conservatives to get out. So this is an opportunity for them to really sit down and serve the people, and they might be voted back, you know.
Well, let's go to the Citizen South Africa. Citizen South Africa says, put the people first. Stagnant economic growth, high unemployment, poverty, and energy crisis are on the table. These are among the ills plaguing South Africa. So what would the government of national unity tackle as its first cabinet issue this week? That's a question that South Africans are asking. Which of the items will it pick, or does it have to do all of them at the same time? Experts believe that service delivery will top the agenda. I mean, Shago, similar issues across the whole world, whether it's poverty, whether it's energy crisis, the economy, similar problems plaguing everyone across the world.
I think that the place I would recommend the world to look at is the effort that is going on by the Lula government in Brazil. I had asked the president himself that, look, what exactly is the thing going on here? And he said to me, in very clear language, the world has gotten to a point where the poor no longer have patience. Therefore, any government must understand that the priority now must be what makes the life of the poor better. And if that is the central theme of how you design policies, programs, and activities of government, you will find out that the poor will begin to see incremental happiness and incremental goodness. So if you put the people first, it can be done. It has to be deliberate. It's one policy after the other, one policy after the other. Consistently, you will have the answers you want. The people are not that unreasonable, but they are tired of being cheerleaders to their leaders who are living well, and the collaborators of their leaders who are private sector giants that are living so well, doing all of the money, and they are here put on earth so that I can be clapping for them. That's what it is, really.
Cheerleaders. What a choice of words.
Yeah, you know, in cheerleaders, indeed. You know that when you look at the results of the elections, you can clearly see the frustrations of people. People are talking and saying again and again, our politicians, our so-called representatives are not listening to us. Governments are doing something different, what they think the people need. And people are saying, no, we want to bring you back to where we want you to be. You are not doing the things that matter to us, the policies that will change our lives. The poverty that we're talking about in African countries, when you look at Europe, for instance, in the last couple of years, maybe 5 years, and especially during this Ukraine war, energy has gone up so high that people are so mortified of what their future is going to be. Indeed.
There's nothing more to add, really. We have just less than one. I think Shegu has encapsulated it. Service. I keep saying that. Where there's a will, there's a way. And where you put the people, if you're... The question to ask our politicians and leaders generally is, why do you want power? Do you want power for the sake of power? Or do you want power to serve the people, make the lives of the people better? Like I said a while ago, Kema said, Labour has come to do public service. If that is your interest, the people will support you. But it's going to get to a point where they will rise up and say, enough of this.
This one, less than a minute. What are your reflections?
Unfortunately, you know, people go to elections, and when they change the party in leadership, it's not because they are so confident that the next party will get it right at first. It's trial and trial until we get it right. So the fact that the government has been changed, the people understand that it's not because the next person coming in, we do it, with a wand of magic, but because they are tired of seeing what has been done over and over again. So let's try a different set of people and see it will be different. Unfortunately, it's not so different in South Africa because we still have the ANC with the majority, even though it's not super, and then the coalition with DA and 8 other political parties. Now, reading this story, different ministers are promising, they'll prioritize that. But what exactly do you prioritize? I always say it, I do not envy those in government. It is not it's not an easy job. But people keep vying, people like Mr. Showomi keep vying for positions.
No job is easy.
Then, no job is easy, but you're elected to do it.
Yes.
And that's what that is what politicians will have to struggle with for as long as it takes. And the people will keep changing because they have the power to change. So it's a lesson for all sides. Now they have a new government in place. Can they do it differently? If they don't, what happens in the next 5 years? It's in the hands of South Africans to see.
That's why you need to join politics.
Little drops of water fill the pocket. The most important thing happening.
But it's no brainer that you put
no, what I'm saying is, what is happening in South Africa, it will teach them a little lesson. It takes light, keep on shining, and then it expands. Anyway, that's it here on Daybreak on Arise News. Thank you, Dr. Constance, for being here. And of course, Shego, for always, waking up early to join us on this show. And that will be it. I am Ndi Amobe. Thank you.